right, let me figure this out. So I should be able to load up. I think this is working. Should be. Put my own. And then I might be able to help me out here. Any caption. Crap. It didn't work. I guess just search. Stupid. I really like this. This stuff annoys me. I don't understand technology. I want to see if I can figure out how to do this, but if not, I'll have to just do something like go search the video up.
Time on my YouTube channel. I'll put the link below. I will be
What is this?
NFL free agency and NFL trades.
All right. Let me just put it in parentheses. Search Ryan Winter. Check Twitter actually for my link, and it's should be at Ryan Winter 1, I believe is my Twitter, and then we should be good. 1. That's not going to lead to the right person, but that's my. All right. Anyways, I'm not even trying. So I wanted to discuss a few topics first. I want to send out the link a little bit first, but a couple topics I wanted to start off with. I made a list of some of the stuff I thought was a little bit more important before the actual free agency starts at 4 o'clock. So let me just send out one more link on here. All right, we are good to go. So I'm going to go ahead. I'll leave Facebook on for right now. I got the mute on as well. All right. So I wanted to go over a few things first. I want to talk about obviously the Browns, because the Browns have been really active so far. And I like some of the stuff they're doing. I don't necessarily understand some of the other stuff. I like Tyrod Taylor. I think that's a pretty good pickup for the Browns. And the reason I like Tyrod is I think he's a pretty high character guy. You know, living in Baltimore and seeing him here, he was nothing but a stand-up guy the entire time. He's really worked hard on the Bills. He puts a lot into every game he plays. He's very talented. I really like the guy. I think he's a good fit for a team that sometimes has a little bit of locker room troubles, I think would be a kind of a mild way to put it. So I do like Tyrod there. I'm not sure how I feel about Landry yet. The jury's still out. I know that Landry has had some character issues in the past. I think something happened last year where he almost got suspended. I don't think he did. I could be wrong, but I know that Landry, I've heard things about his character, and you know, it's some stuff that might be a little bit of a concern. But that being said, it doesn't sound like it's anything that can't, you know, just go away. And I think that he's an extremely talented guy, and I think he's sort of the perfect type of safety blanket that a young quarterback could use, you know, to just throw it to and in the slot and stuff like that. So I do think that could be a good move. The jury is still out on that one. I don't like the trade of DeShone Kizer for Demarius Randall. I know that you know, the Browns, you know, didn't think that Kizer was very good, but I mean, I think that the problem they had with Kizer was he came coming out of the draft last year. He was seen as probably the highest ceiling guy in terms of quarterbacks in the entire draft. And yeah, he has the strongest arm, I think, out of most of those guys outside of maybe Mahomes. He can move around in the pocket, and you know, he's a big guy. You know, he's built basically to play in the NFL. However, he was very raw, and he had a lot of accuracy issues, and I think some of it was mechanics. And so he was seen more as somebody who should sit behind a veteran for a year, improve his mechanics, watch, you know, the game, and improve as time went on. And unfortunately, the Browns sped that process up And a guy like Kaiser, he's somebody that, because he's so raw, when you throw him out there too early, he'll lose confidence. And you've seen this time and time again with a lot of quarterbacks who have had talent, a lot of young guys, and go to teams that are awful and then proceed to basically have their careers thrown away because they're in a situation where they're never going to get any more comfortable. They're never going to become any more confident. And for example, Tim Couch on the Browns, everyone trashes that pick as a bust. But I don't understand how people can think it's necessarily a bust. He went into a situation where it was a new team, and it was a team that has turned out to now be awful for basically 20 years. And he didn't have much around him, and the team management was awful. Basically, the coaching staff has always been a revolving door in Cleveland. And so everyone, criticizes the Tim Couch pick. I think the Bengals picking Akili Smith was way worse. I mean, Akili Smith was the biggest joke of that draft. But everyone says, oh, well, the Browns should have picked Donovan McNabb. And again, McNabb was not somebody that the Browns were even looking at. From what I heard and from what I saw, they were looking at a pick between Couch and Akili Smith. McNabb didn't always have such a great arm. McNabb was a solid player, and Andy Reid turned him into an even better player. McNabb was very similar to what Alex Smith was. I mean, they're pretty similar players. So maybe McNabb was a little bit more mobile and, maybe a little bit better. But McNabb was not really considered as the number one pick. I remember the Eagles fans freaked out, too, because they wanted Ricky Williams. Anyways, the idea that Kaiser is a bust, or the idea that giving up on him this quickly, is something that, they missed the draft pick. They did this to themselves. And I think Kaiser has a lot of potential. And instead of putting him behind somebody last year, instead of going out and maybe signing a veteran, even somebody like Ryan Fitzpatrick, who's awful, somebody to just take the hits while Kaiser learned, I think that they ruined a possible gem that they got in the late second round. And that's an issue I have. And it seems like they're already giving up on him this season. And again, like, if they don't feel like he's the guy, then that's one thing. But if they're just going to go and draft a quarterback number 1 overall, which is fine, it's a good quarterback class, it seems to me that they're just repeating this cycle of decisions, and they have to treat their situation as if they are the Browns and not a normal football team. This is something I was talking with my friend about. I think there's a standard for normal teams and normal teams can get away with certain stuff. And then there's a standard for the Browns, who basically have to. So in my opinion, the Browns need a couple very specific things. The Browns need high character guys. They need a new coach. I don't know why they kept Hugh Jackson. And they need basically a combination of veteran talents. And they need, they need to maximize their use of their draft pick. And they have 2 picks in the top 5. They need to stop picking project guys. They also need to be aware of what their system requires. And I think that the problem is that they seem to just have way too much turnover. They need a little bit more roster consistency. And when you keep just switching quarterbacks every year, which is kind of what they've done. I mean, they went they've taken 3 quarterbacks at number 22 overall. They took Brady Quinn, Brandon Weeden, and Johnny Manziel. All of them were busts. I mean, Manziel was not a surprise. The other 2. I mean, okay, so in that, they took, if you look at just those 3 quarterbacks in general, one of them was a bench press legend, Brady Quinn. I think what it's shown over the years is that quarterbacks who do better on the bench press actually lose accuracy. And I mean, Tim Tebow is a perfect example of this. Tim Tebow was built like a beast. He was sort of Brady Quinn in terms of strength, and he had bad accuracy. And then you look at, they drafted Brandon Weeden with the 22nd pick. Brandon Weeden was 29 at the time. He's a former baseball player. That one was a kind of a head scratcher. And then when you draft Johnny Manziel, and you're in the cold weather and there's the wind blowing and you're in a tough division, why would you draft a weak-armed guy? I don't necessarily get that. I think that, unfortunately, Teddy Bridgewater's career has taken a dive because of injuries, but Teddy Bridgewater is a very high character guy. He was very good for his first 2 seasons. He's a terrific game manager. He would have been a pretty decent fit. He doesn't have the strongest arm, doesn't have the most accurate arm, but he's a very high character guy. You could put him in there right away. He has poise, and he showed the ability to make plays when he needed to. And instead of getting that kind of guy, you go and get somebody like Manziel for no apparent reason. I mean, he had a weak arm. There were so many red flags about his character. And then you bring in a low character guy, and then you're surprised when he continues to be low character. So again, I'm not saying that Randall's a low character guy. I don't know much about Demarius Randall. I know he hasn't been very good in Green Bay. He's been somewhat of a bust. He's had a couple pretty bad years. I don't think they got that pick right, and I think there's a reason they're ready to trade him already. But and again, guy, that's fine too. It doesn't, it's up to them. But I see them repeating this behavior of just constant roster turnover, constant drafting quarterbacks in weird spots and then giving up on them, and then replacing them with various stopgap types, and just a revolving door of coaches. And I mean, there's a lot of coaches that they had that they probably should have kept instead of Hugh Jackson. So they have to treat their situation as sort of different than, most other teams do, because they don't have sort of the culture, and they don't have the winning history, and they don't have the roster stability to do sort of like what, New England does, which is New England can just sort of bring in a bunch of randos to put with their regular guys. They have a coach and they have a system, and they can basically make anything work. The Browns don't have that. The Browns need either to build something like that or to bring in high character guys to start, to at least be able to sort of shift to whatever the current coach needs to do. They also need a better coach. But we'll see what happens here. And like I said, I think Landry is a really nice pickup. If he doesn't have these character issues that have concerned me, he's a really nice pickup, because he'll be great for whatever young quarterback comes in. He's a great, safety blanket type of receiver. He's kind of like, what Wes Welker sort of used to be, it seems to me. And I also really do like Tyrod. I think that Tyrod is going to be a pretty solid stopgap quarterback. I've always liked Tyrod. I think he'll be pretty good. He's one of the higher character guys they've had. I think for the most part, he has a pretty strong arm, so he should be able to, deal with the cold in a tough division. I mean, he's been in Baltimore for a lot of his career, so I think that's a pretty good pickup. On the downside of Cleveland, they just lost Joe Thomas, obviously, to retirement, and that was, that hurts, because, I mean, if you look back at their history, recent draft history, Joe Thomas was pretty much their only draft success. It's actually kind of sad. I mean, in my opinion, so they've had a couple of draft successes recently. Well, most of them have been busts, but if you look at a few, basically the last of them just, left the season. So I consider Joe Thomas to be, probably their best draft success. Joe Hayden was also a pretty nice pick. And yeah, obviously he just dropped off after some injuries. And then Danny Shelton, I don't understand that trade either. And I was debating with my friend about this as well, because, he's arguing that, Shelton would probably demand a big contract for something like a nose tackle. And that's probably true. And, I think it depends on how much you value that sort of, player within your defensive system. If you have a stout 3-4 and you want to make sure you can have that run stuffing nose tackle, he doesn't offer a lot of pass rush, but he is a very good run stopper. That being said, again, I brought in another element that my friend didn't seem to want to admit to, which is the Browns need roster consistency, because they don't have it. They don't have the ability to, cycle players through in the way that the Patriots do. They don't have the ability to plug and play, because they don't have scheme consistency, because they have a new coach every year. And every year it comes in and people are like, oh, this guy doesn't fit, the new coach's, the new regime stuff. Well, okay. But are you just going to keep doing this every year and creating new regimes and not even seeing if they work? Are you not giving players a chance to, just try and show that they can be in, multiple systems? And again, I think if you're switching to a 4-3, which I don't see the Browns doing, Danny Shelton's, not a fit for a 4-3. He's basically just a straight up nose tackle. But he's a good nose tackle. He was one of their only draft hits recently, if not the only one. Myles Garrett's been really nice. He's been a really good player. But again, you have to look at roster consistency with them as more so of a factor than teams that, win games sometimes. So I don't, I think that trading Danny Shelton, one of the only guys on your team that you could sort of rely on to, put out there. And I think they lowered his playing time this past season. I'm not exactly sure why. He still played pretty well. I think if he's demanding max money, I understand. But I don't understand why they didn't, couldn't just exercise his, 5th-year option, let him play through his 4th season, and then maybe get some more value for him, see if he can increase his value again. Because his 2nd season was really his best season. So I just, this team seems to, make a good move and then they make a head scratcher every single time. And I have no problem with nuking their roster. It's not a huge deal to me. I don't think that's a bad thing if you can make it work. But you have to commit to consistency, and you have to recognize when you have talent and understand that when you have that talent and when it's not a locker room poison, like, for example, Marcus Peters in Kansas City, they had to get rid of him even though he was a, excellent cornerback. It doesn't really matter if you keep switching regimes. You sort of, at a certain point, need to have guys play together for a long period of time. And I think that they have failed to recognize that. I think the owner just keeps getting more and more impatient. And it's not looking good. And things aren't going to turn around if they keep doing the same things and, expecting it to go as if, it would go for another team. And, they brought in Carlos Hyde. I think that's fine. I mean, I don't know why they wouldn't just re-sign Crowell. I mean, Crowell was vastly underused last year. Crowell is a really, really nice player. I mean, he's shown in the past that he can be a pretty solid player. I'm not sure exactly what kind of money he commanded. But I don't, I also, I guess take a look at the contracts that Carlos Hyde, was given. Let's see. I want to see what the difference is in contracts. Okay. Okay, here's some deals. Here's some deal numbers. All right. This is it's hard to sift through this stuff. I created a throwaway account just to look at like specific stuff, and it's still hard to sift through it. I'm just gonna have to go ahead and look up Carlos Hyde. Hyde Brown's contract. I want to see what he got. I want to see what he was offered. Okay, so it's 3 years and more than 15 million. So then let's compare that with Isaiah Crowell Jets contract. Which, by the way, I think that the Jets really found a pretty solid player here. Okay, it says, so they're both 3-year contracts, which is fine for running back. Let's see. It doesn't say the amount, unfortunately. I'm not sure exactly what it is. I would assume it's probably very similar to Carlos Hyde. I mean, they're very similar players. I think Hyde probably is a little bit more versatile, but also I think Crowell might be a slightly better runner. So, again, I don't see the difference between the two. I don't know what's going on in the locker room. I'm not in the locker room with these guys. But again, I just don't understand why they don't prioritize roster fluidity more, and it just doesn't make a heck of a lot of sense to me. All right. I want to go through some other teams because I've been talking about the Browns for ages. Obviously, everyone knows how I feel about Casey Hayward. I absolutely love the guy. I think he's the most underrated player in the league, but I'm so glad that he finally got paid. He got 3 years, $36 million. Should have been paid basically 5 years, $60 million 2 years ago, but somehow the Chargers managed to get the biggest steal in free agency history. Casey Hayward's been constantly at the top of Pro Football Focus. Even before that, he's just been constantly somebody that's gone under the radar. I don't understand why the Packers kept basically every one of their corners except him. They draft a corner almost every year, and they decided to keep Sam Shields instead of him. They tried to replace him with Randall. Obviously that didn't work. They still have Quentin Rollins, I think. He hasn't been very good either. So, I mean, the Chargers basically stole Casey Hayward for 3 years, $15 million. But it's good to see that he's finally really getting his money because he deserves it. He's gone under the radar for so long. And then there's some other stuff that happened that I like as well. I think there were some good receiver signings, in my opinion. I like Allen Robinson to the Bears, and I like Sammy Watkins to the Chiefs pretty much for the same reason. Let me just make sure the quality is not. I think there was some. Okay. So I like those two moves because I think that both of these quarterbacks Mahomes in Kansas City, who they're obviously now committing to because they traded Alex Smith, and Trubisky in Chicago, who showed some good potential last season. I think that giving those two dynamic receivers in the form of guys who can make plays down the field, neither one of them had that last year. I mean, Tyreek Hill is a nice player in Kansas City, but he's not the kind of number one wide receiver you can force the ball to. And I think that having Sammy Watkins there will make guys like Tyreek Hill even better. I think Sammy Watkins split out is going to be extremely hard to cover when you have a guy with an arm like Mahomes. And they'll be able to then work in a lot of check down type stuff. And then again, I think Trubisky, played pretty well last year for just being sort of thrown out into the fire. He's shown the ability to escape from pressure. But if you look at who he was throwing to last year, it's actually kind of pathetic. I mean, he had Kendall Wright as his main guy, and I can't even remember half the guys' names. So it was pretty much just kind of a joke. So it's good. And they also signed Trey Burton, I believe, as well. That was announced, I think, either earlier today or last night. But that's another really good signing. That's a solid tight end. He's a Trey Burton backup tight end on the Eagles past couple of years. Really good all around tight ends. He can block, he can catch. He's going to be a nice safety blanket. He'll be a solid. I don't know if he's going to be playing over Zach Miller or with Zach Miller, but I mean he's basically a similar player to Zach Miller. A little bit maybe of a younger version of Zach Miller. I think Trubisky will really benefit from having both the tight end upgrade and the number one wide receiver. I also think Teddy Bridgewater to the Jets is a pretty interesting move. I've always loved Bridgewater. He's a high character guy. Injuries obviously derailed him. The Vikings sort of gave up on him, and the Vikings just signed Kirk Cousins. Bridgewater was a really, really good game manager, sort of an Alex Smith type of player, except I think he probably had a stronger arm than Smith. I mean, he was a Pro Bowler a couple of times. I think he could sort of revive his career. I mean, the Jets also re-signed Josh McCown for some reason because McCown was actually pretty decent last year when he played, but he's not. He's again, we saw that in Chicago, and then he got a contract, and then he became Josh McCown again. So I think this might be a good way for Bridgewater to sort of just fly under the radar a little bit. People have sort of forgotten by now because he hasn't played in 2 years, but he was an up and coming, pretty solid player. And I think this might be a good way for him to sort of ease his way back into the league. And I mean, Josh McCown, if Josh McCown just starts being Josh McCown again, you could see Bridgewater out there. And, I wouldn't be surprised to see him sort of, win some sort of comeback of the year or something like that. I mean, he's definitely a really nice talent, very high character, and pretty accurate passer, a pretty good arm. So I definitely hope that he can sort of revive his career. I'd love to see that from him. One of the moves that I think might really go under the radar, and I think that this is something that I don't think people realize about this guy, and I don't think they realize how good he has been, and I think it's because of the team he's been on. So the left tackle of the Bills, Cordy Glenn, was just traded to Cincinnati. And not a lot of people, it seems to me, know really much about Cordy Glenn. He's had some injury problems over the years. He was a second-round draft pick, I believe, in 2012, I think. He's been on the Bills since that time. Let me just take a look here. Cordy Glenn. Yeah, so he was drafted in 2012. He's been the starter every single season for the Bills at left tackle. He missed a bunch of games last year. He's played only, out of his 6 seasons, he's played only 3 full seasons. But he's very, very underrated. If you play Madden, you probably know how good he is. And if you keep looking at Pro Football Focus, you probably know how good he is. If you're just a casual viewer, it's hard to spot these types of guys. I mean, everyone knows about guys like Joe Thomas and back in the day Jonathan Ogden and stuff. Not a lot of people know much about some of these other guys that are really good. For example, another one of the guys that I like this is Teron Armstead over on the Saints, another left tackle who is really, really good and just slipped under the radar for a while. And I think that the Bengals didn't realize how valuable Andrew Whitworth had become, because Andrew Whitworth is basically a generational type player on the line. And he's up there with Thomas. So when they lose him and they insert just a rando young guy and the guy fails, I think that they sort of bit off a little bit more than they could chew. And, you saw their porous offensive line last season. So I'm scrolling over, taking a look at some of Cordy Glenn's stuff, but he is definitely going to improve their line immediately. I mean, he is a huge upgrade over anybody that they have there already. He didn't have a great season last year, but he's been well above average for Pro Football Focus for a while. And I mean, he's held his own over in Buffalo. And I think that's one of the reasons why he just sort of slipped under the radar. So, I mean, I guess it just depends. Dez has some health issues. He's also had a real drop off in talent as a result of some of his injuries. I mean, I guess it just depends on, if they think that they even need him anymore. Because I don't, I know he has a, fairly big contract. He's not really, pulling his weight in terms of the money he's making. I'll agree with you on that. I mean, last year, he didn't have a 1,000-yard season. It's been since 2014 that he's had an actual really good season. Wide receivers have, just a slightly shorter or slightly bigger shelf life than, running backs do. And it looks like he's declining, and he hasn't played a full season since, this past year he did, but before that, I mean, he hadn't played since 2014. I don't know if the Cowboys would need to sign Sue, though. I'm not sure what they have on the interior line. I know for a fact, I think I saw that they got DeMarcus Lawrence back. I think that they signed him. Let me take a look, though, at what they have right now in terms of their defensive line. But I mean, Sue is still just as good as he was when the Dolphins signed him. He just, hasn't had the sack numbers, but he's still been pretty much just as good. He's really slipped under the radar since he signed there, but he's a pretty solid player. I mean, so looking on here, I think the Cowboys, I mean, so first of all, I think if, they have to start looking for an exit plan for Jason Witten. So I think maybe you do that in the draft. I think the Cowboys' biggest needs, it seems to me, I think they just sort of need offensive line depth. I mean, they don't have a ton of, so for example, if Zach Martin were to go down or, Tyron Smith goes down, they don't really have a ton behind those guys. They have a couple, pretty nice stars on the line. I think they have probably the most underrated center in the league. I think they just need to sign some offensive line depth. Actually, as a Ravens fan, I mean, Ryan Jensen is pretty much a solid utility lineman. He did well when he started this past year. But a guy like that, for example, I think would help the Cowboys. Like I said, I think they have to start looking towards Witten just getting older. And I mean, I do think that they should probably find at least one wide receiver to get in there as well, especially since Dez is really, fallen off in, talent. It is a good wide receiver draft, though, apparently. And I'm not sure when they're picking. I would assume it's kind of high because I know they didn't do so great last year. No, actually, yeah. So I'm not sure what they're picking. I think it's probably in the top 20, though. I would think. So, I mean, there are, some good guys coming in this year, and some of them, apparently didn't have a good combine or pro day or something. And, so there could be some, some sort of wide receiver sitting, in the top 20, late in the top 20 that they could grab. I don't know about the tight ends in this draft. It seems like it's basically a quarterback heavy draft and a pass rusher heavy draft. Which I don't think they'll need because, I do like Dak. I think Dak is actually pretty similar to like what Teddy Bridgewater is, for example. But yeah, it depends on if they think that Dez is worth whatever he's making. He's still a decent wide receiver, but, he's always sort of been a headache, as, most of these talented wide receivers are. And he's definitely dropped off in production. I mean, the Packers released Jordy Nelson, and Jordy Nelson, I think, had a better year than Dez. So I could easily see them dropping Dez. There's been a lot of bizarre drops also too. There's a couple I really just don't get. I don't really understand. First of all, Honey Badger just got released today. I don't know if I get that. I'm not sure why they did that. He's 5 years into his career. I mean, it might be due to injuries. I know he's had some injury issues and stuff, but he's performed at a high level when he's been healthy. So I don't really understand that one. I guess Richard Sherman maybe became poisonous in the locker room, but, he was still playing at a high level. I know he had a few injury issues. He was still playing at a high level, though, so I'm not exactly sure I understand that one. And then, Jordy Nelson, for example, I think he played pretty well last year from what I saw. Let me take a look. I mean, he had a pretty decent comeback year. I think, what was it, the year before? Actually, no, he didn't play. Never mind. Jordy Nelson had a pretty bad year. I apparently was not paying attention to him. Oh, yeah, But I mean, Aaron Rodgers was out, so I guess you have to account for that. But yeah, I mean, he's older. Nearly, he'll be 33 by the time the season starts. I get that. I get that drop. I think honestly the Cowboys just I think they just need depth, because I think, when they lose, they have a lot of good, really strong players. A lot of the guys at the top of their position. I mean, Zeke is a really nice player. They have a couple really strong linemen, but it doesn't seem like they have a lot behind those guys. So, when those guys go down, I would have concerns. I think line depth should be definitely a priority for them. They have a really good defense now too, which they haven't always had. I mean, Sean Lee has finally decided to stay healthy, and he's been just as good as, ever. And Jalen Smith looked pretty decent in his rookie year in limited basically snaps. I like how he looks for the future, as long as he stays healthy. I mean, DeMarcus Lawrence just became a beast randomly, and he's in his 4th year, and all of a sudden he's just ridiculous. And that was pretty refreshing for that team. So let me take a look at some of the other stuff that's happened. Actually, the league just became like the new season. Looks like Arizona signing Josh Bynes. The trade for Tyrod Taylor became confirmed. Let's see here. Oh my God. Okay, so this was a deal that I already didn't like, but this is insane. And I don't understand this deal. And I'm going to go into depth about this because I don't really get it. So, I mean, Jimmy Graham is a terrific tight end talent. He's terrific. He's one of the best pass catching tight ends I've seen in my lifetime. And he's basically in the Antonio Gates mold. And that sort of tight end basically broke out when I was a kid. Antonio Gates was one of a kind. There wasn't anybody like him at the time. So now there's a lot of guys. Gronk is a little bit better than those guys, in my opinion, because Gronk can block. But Jimmy Graham is basically in that sort of Antonio Gates type mold. Jimmy Graham is an excellent pass catching tight end. But he just received 3 years, $30 million from the Packers. And my first thought was, well, I don't remember the Packers really being a tight end friendly offense. So I did some digging, and the last time they had a tight end that was even remotely relevant was when Jermichael Finley was still playing before he broke his neck or whatever it was. So it's been ages since the Packers have really even tried to use a tight end. This was the same thing that I talked about last year with Ty Montgomery. Everyone was saying he was, when he got injured and then he came back, or when Aaron Jones break out, Ty Mont would still catch passes on 3rd down and stuff. And I tried to explain that the Packers don't throw to their running backs. The Packers throw to their receivers, and more specifically their outside receivers. So, when you look at James Jones, for example, when he left, it wasn't Randall Cobb that's production went up. It was Devontae Adams, because Devontae Adams is the outside guy. The Packers are basically an offense that's very, heavy on power running and throwing to their outside receivers. So I just don't understand why they're, again, if they plan to use Jimmy Graham as some sort of receiver, have him lose a bunch of weight and play outside, then that's a good signing, I think. But I don't understand why they wouldn't have targeted somebody that would seem to fit them better. I mean, if they're willing to spend that much money, I don't understand why they wouldn't have spent it on somebody like Allen Robinson or Sammy Watkins. I think they're the outside receiver types. So I don't necessarily, I don't think it's a bad signing, and he's obviously a very good player. We'll have to see if the fit works, because, it's the Packers are mainly an outside receiver team. And that's why, Jordy Nelson, James Jones were always the guys. And even, before that, Greg Jennings was, their outside guy, Donald Driver as well. They've always had their outside receivers as their main guys. So we'll have to see what happens with that. But I don't really, know if I like the fit all that much yet. I could be wrong, but it just doesn't seem to me like it was the smartest allocation of money for them. So the Bills signed Star Lotulelei for 5 years. I mean, he was okay. He was outplayed by Vernon Butler last year. That's probably why the Panthers were fine with getting rid of him. Star Lotulelei was part of that 2013 draft class that was pretty weak. He was outplayed by his 2nd-round counterpart as well, Quan Short. Short is a beast. So, I guess, the Bills, he seems like a scheme fit. They run sort of a hybrid 4-3-3-4 type of thing, and they like having their fast linebackers and their big bulky linemen on defense. And they didn't have Marcel Darius last year. I guess he'll sort of hopefully make up for that. Again, I think it's an okay signing. I don't know why you give him 5 years, Star Lotulelei. I think people give too many years to some of these guys. Oh, that's interesting. This contract with Teddy Bridgewater is it can be up to $15 million. Looks like with incentives, which is pretty interesting, especially with a guy, a high character guy. I mean, he could easily earn those incentives if he wins the starting role. Teddy Bridgewater could end up definitely winning something like comeback player of the year. Let's take a look. So looks like Sheldon Richardson is somebody that is being discussed a lot. Demario Davis is going to the Saints. That could be interesting. Demario Davis is a pretty solid inside linebacker. I don't necessarily see an issue with that. I think he could definitely help New Orleans. New Orleans defense is starting to look better already. I mean, Marshawn Lattimore was insane. I mean, it's hard to find a rookie corner that can hold their own like that, let alone probably should have been an all-pro. I mean, he's ridiculous. The Lions released Eric Ebron. That's not a surprise to me. He can't block, and he's very inconsistent with his routes, and he's a bust. I mean, he's had plenty of time to develop. He has the athletic ability, but he's never really taken, a ton of steps forward. And he's had constant opportunities, and he hasn't, I understand that drop. I don't think that's, I think they're just cutting their losses on that pick. I remember in that draft when we were going and watching it and stuff. I mean, he was the hot ticket. Everyone wanted the super athletic Eric Ebron tight end. And yeah, I mean, it looks like he busted, which is, he's had plenty of time to pick up his game, and he was never a red zone target. I mean, he was never a blocker. He was always awful at blocking. So that's not a surprise. Dion Lewis is getting from the Titans 4 years, $20 million. Jeez. I mean, what's their plan with DeMarco Murray? Did they drop him? I didn't look that up, but I mean, don't they already have Derrick Henry as well? Derrick Henry looked pretty good last year. DeMarco Murray. Are they planning on, okay, so they did drop him. And what happened with Derrick Henry then? Because, I mean, again, like, there's nothing wrong with, signing a nice guy. Okay, so they're still going to go with sort of a running back duo. Like, okay, I get the running back duo idea. I don't know why you would give Dion Lewis that kind of contract in a running back duo. I mean, that's I guess that, if you really value Dion Lewis like that, I mean, he did have a really good year last year. I'll give him that. But I don't know. It seems like a lot of money. The Bears are getting Prince Amukamara back. That's fine. It depends on how much money they give him, but he's an okay guy. He's had some injury issues, but when he's on the field, he's okay. So the Bills the Bills also signed Trent Murphy, who was a Redskins edge guy. Looks like it has an incentive deal. That's okay. Trent Murphy's all right. Nothing special. No, I mean, I think he'll be a scheme fit for the Bills. He's sort of similar to what Manny Lawson used to be, it seems like, for them. Yeah, I mean, they sort of an edge setter, not any, not a crazy pass rushing legend, but he can get to the quarterback. Let me just take a look at his stats real quick. Yeah, so he had a pretty nice breakout year this past year. But before that, he was never much of a crazy pass rusher. He's definitely a solid football player, though. I think the Bills, I don't know. See, again, a lot of these contracts, I don't know what to expect right now because the league is shifting in terms of, what types of players are getting what contracts. And so I don't know if 3 years, $30 million for a guy like this is, okay, so it's 3 years, $21 million, and it can be up to 30 with incentives, I guess. That's interesting. Eagles. Patrick Robinson is signing a 4-year deal with the Saints. Isn't Patrick Robinson really old? Isn't he? Let me look at this. I think, first of all, he started his career on the Saints from what I remember. I think he's really old. Yeah, he'll probably be 31 by the time the season starts. Yeah, he did start his career on the Saints. Why do you give a 31-year-old corner a 4-year deal? Like, I'm not sure I understand the logic there. I'm not sure I understand why I mean, again, it depends. Like, there are some corners that can, make that work, but it's just, well, I guess, let me take a look and see if he was, good last year. Cause I'm not sure I understand giving, a guy like that. Oh, he was really good last year. Apparently he's been up and down though. I mean, like, again, if you want to give a player, like a big contract, cause you think they'll help you, that's fine. I don't know if I would have, given a 31-year-old 4 years. This is, I just saw a tweet and this made me sad. Joe Thomas. This is retweeted from Adam Schefter. Adam Schefter retweeted a guy named Paul Hembekidis. I've never heard of him, but it says his favorite Joe Thomas stat is that he never started a season. The Browns apparently have never started 1-0. They've lost every like opening day since 2007. That's sad. And then you wonder why, everyone sort of laughs at them. I mean, I think I could do a better job running the Browns than they're doing right now. And I have no experience with this at all. Jerry Maclin got released by the Ravens, which was expected probably. I mean, they're signing Ryan Grant. Oh, I wanted to talk about that as well. Everyone, saying, oh, this guy's never had a 100-yard receiving game. The Ravens are signing him. The Redskins were sort of a, kind of a cluster at wide receiver. And he actually stood out last year, which is kind of interesting. I mean, there were a lot of guys that were expected to play pretty well. I mean, they have the former first rounder, Doxson. Crowder was supposed to have a really good year. I mean, they brought in Terrell Pryor, who was supposed to be the next, Randy Moss or what? I mean, they had a lot of talent at that spot. And Ryan Grant, who's just some random guy, has managed to actually get some good playing time and turn it into, production. And, 4 years, $29 million for a guy who's still fairly unproven. Again, I do think that's kind of pricey. But, I mean, he has shown the ability to make plays when he's been given opportunities. So I think it could pay off for the Ravens. I don't necessarily hate the signing. I think, I think if you value, him and you think that he can be the guy, I mean, he has some good size. He's 6 feet. It seems like he can play in the slot as well. He's in his prime. I mean, he'll still be 27 going into the season. I don't necessarily hate or love the signing yet. I guess we'll have to see what happens with that. Ravens re-signing James Hurst was gross. I don't understand that one. Like, I understand that you want offensive line depth. Every team needs that. Why James Hurst? He's been in the league 4 years. He was some undrafted rookie that everyone got really excited about in the preseason. And then he proceeded to show absolutely zero noticeable improvement the rest of his career. I really don't, understand why they're rewarding him for just being the same scrub that he's been, all 4 years. But, again, like, I get the sentiment, but I think 4 years, $17 million. Why not sign Ryan Jensen to that? Ryan Jensen's proven he can do well. Ryan Jensen's about to become a free agent. Jensen's proven he can start. Hurst has not done that. So Patriots are keeping Rex Burkhead. Okay, that's pretty insignificant. Sammy Watkins' deal with the Chiefs is pretty big. Okay, they announced the numbers for Crowell's deal for the Jets. It's 3 years, $12 million. And it's a $3 million signing bonus. So it's quite a bit of it's guaranteed as well. So that's kind of interesting. Let's see here. Who is Chris Hubbard? How do I not know who that is? Should I know who this is? Chris Hubbard. Is that a punter? How would I not know who this is? Okay, he's a guard. Okay. He's apparently signed just a really big deal. I should know him. He's on the Steelers. Let's see here. There's a lot of like interior linemen that I have no idea who they are. It's actually kind of sad. Let's see. Guards, tackles, Hubbard. Okay. It's underwhelming. He's average. Geez, the Browns signed him to an insane deal though. What is this? 5 years, $36 million for a below average serviceable guard? Like, okay, this is the kind of stuff that makes me just like, I could go on a day-long rant about how the Browns have so many opportunities and do so much stuff right, and then do the exact wrong things that cancel out the right things. And it's just frustrating. Okay, so the Chargers are signing Virgil Green. Pretty good blocking tight end, as Ian Rappaport says, which is true. Let's see here. Austin Seferian-Jenkins is apparently visiting the Seahawks. Oh, now I want to talk about Nate Solder to the Giants. I mean, they obviously needed an offensive line upgrade, and Nate Solder is a solid offensive lineman. I mean, at this point in his career, the Giants gave him 4 years, $62 million, and I just want to take a look. Honestly, I love Solder. I've always thought he was sort of underrated. He was, their first rounder in 2011. That was a really strong first round. But 4 years at his age, again, it's definitely a lot of money to throw at a guy who's going on 30 at a position that, doesn't have a huge shelf life. I mean, especially left tackle, unless you can be a sort of a technician, it's really hard to, maintain that sort of high level of play. There's not a lot of people who are like Andrew Whitworth. So, I mean, Solder's been pretty solid. He's never been anything special, but he's been a solid player for the Patriots. He will be, he'll definitely be 30 by the time the season starts. So he'll be on the first year of his 4-year, $62 million contract when he's 30. I don't know how I feel about that. I think age is definitely a huge concern. But I do think that the Giants, for at least a couple years, if he does manage to play at a high level for at least a couple years of this contract, which I think he could, I think that's definitely an upgrade over what they've had over there. I mean, Eric Flowers has been a disaster. He's been a bust. They can pretty much move on from him with that move, which is a really good thing. Let's see. Donald Stevenson. See, I like that. Donald Stevenson's a pretty solid player. Donald Stevenson's going to the Browns. Chris Smith is going to the Browns. Browns are signing everybody. They're basically creating a new roster. Let's see this. This is kind of interesting. So looks like he's a defensive end pass rusher type. It's insignificant. A lot of these moves are just, honestly, it just seems like we have the money. Why not give it to guys who we can get? It doesn't make sense to me. Let's see. So let me go through some of the other notes that I wanted to talk about as well, because there's some other stuff I wanted to. Okay, so one of the things I also don't understand is how does Sam Bradford keep getting money? Again, I think I heard a quote. Some player or something said like Sam Bradford has been paid the most money in NFL history to do nothing. Bradford has never really had a great year. And he's also, even when he's been healthy, he hasn't been that good. He just got 1 year, $20 million. And he'll probably get injured as usual. I think that was the funniest quote. I wish I remember who said it, but I think I saw it on some show or something. Somebody literally said that he made the most money in NFL history for doing nothing. Nobody has made more money sitting on the bench and doing nothing than Sam Bradford. He's played exactly 2 full seasons in his career. I mean, this is really just bizarre. I don't understand what the Cardinals think they're going to get from this. I mean, again, like Carson Palmer retired, that's fine, but you couldn't do better than Sam Bradford. I think what Case Keenum get from the Broncos. Like Case Keenum's better than Sam Bradford. I wonder if you could just give him that money. Like 1 year, $20 million. I bet I can go find about 5 guys right now that probably got less than that and that are better. I mean, I would have rather had Teddy Bridgewater, especially since Bridgewater's arm is not the greatest. He can play in the warm weather in Arizona. He'd be accurate. It's just, again, it's just a bad allocation of resources. Let's see what they gave Case Keenum. All right. I'm trying to find the number here. Yeah, it's not saying the number in this article. I'll probably find a different article or something. 2 years, $36 million for Case Keenum. That's interesting. I mean, I think, I was listening to Colin Cowherd. He was talking about how the reunion with Gary Kubiak should be pretty good. Kubiak always liked Keenum. I think Keenum showed that he can be pretty consistent this past season. He nearly took the team to the Super Bowl. I mean, that's pretty solid. 2 years, $36 million. I would assume that means that they're done with Simeon and Paxton Lynch, honestly. I would be surprised if they even, kept those guys, or if they, you would think they'd try and trade them at this point. Holy crap. This is insane. Jerick McKinnon, I never saw the details of his deal. 4 years, nearly $37 million. like, okay, I get that these teams like the 49ers have a ton of cap space, but it doesn't mean you should just throw money at players. Jerick McKinnon's a solid player. He's an all right player. Like, I like Jerick McKinnon. He's fine. But every time they've tried to give him like a full-time role in Minnesota, he's never been able to hold up. The best seasons he had were when he was basically a change of pace. So basically what the 49ers did is they just gave a change of pace guy, a guy who's not even that great of a receiving back. I mean, he's okay, but he's not even a receiving specialist. And you just gave a guy like that nearly over $9 million a year. And then you're surprised when you don't win games. I mean, like, again, I understand when you have the cap space. I get it. But, there's a reason you have that cap space, right? And so it's really frustrating to me when you see this kind of stuff happen. And like I said, I'm not dissing on Jerick McKinnon, but I just don't understand. I mean, he's a solid player. He's not nearly $10 million a year. That's not what he should be. TJ Carey, that could be interesting. All right, let me take a look at this. Let's see here. TJ Carey's been okay. He got a ton of money from the Browns as well. Okay, so Sue and Julius Thomas have both been released. Steelers released William Gay, Mike Mitchell, and Robert Golden. Okay. So the Steelers look like they're revamping their defensive backfields. Sue was on a mega contract and he's getting older, so I understand that. But Sue was still playing at a pretty high level, so he'll probably get a pretty decent shorter deal from somewhere. And then Julius Thomas really had those 2 good years, and honestly just 1 good year in Denver. And he's managed to take a lot of money just from that 1 year. He can't block. I mean, he's has injury problems. He's not very consistent. Again, he basically turned Peyton Manning's greatest season ever into just a basically the last 5 years of his career. And somehow, finally people seem to realize that he's not very good. Again, I want to look at TJ Carey because he just signed a pretty big deal with the Browns. Who should the Titans go for in free agency? So hold on, let me take a look at the TJ Carey one. And then, so I was talking about Dion Lewis a little bit earlier. I don't know how I feel about that. TJ Carey is probably a pretty good signing for the Browns. I think the Titans, they need I think their receivers are kind of weak, first of all. I mean, I think that Corey Davis looked pretty decent as a rookie, but, they have to hope that he's going to sort of become the number 1. Eric Decker's pretty old at this point, and Rashard Matthews is a solid number 2. Tajay Sharp was injured as well all year last year, and he looked like he was a pretty good slot guy in his rookie year. I still like the idea of the Derrick Henry, Dion Lewis duo. I don't know if Dion Lewis was worth 4 years, $20 million. That's a lot for a guy who's going to be in a tandem. I think they need probably another tight end as well. Delaney Walker's nice, but they don't really have a lot. I think that they should honestly. They have 2 tackles that they both need to sign these. They need to sign both of these guys to long-term deals, right? So I think that if you're the Titans, you don't want to go out and spend a ton of money because you want to have the cap space to lock up Luan and then Conklin. I think the Titans are a team that are on the rise, and I don't think they're that many pieces away from being a contending team. I don't know if Mariota's the kind of guy that can lead the team like that. But I think they have probably the best tackle duo in the league, and I think you want to make sure you have cap space for that. I'm not sure if they already re-signed Luan. I would assume they haven't yet. I'm sure that they exercised their option on him. So let me take a look and see. But they absolutely have to lock him up. He should be priority number 1. And then, Conklin 2 years down the line should be priority number 1 at that time as well. When you have guys like this, when you have this kind of tackle duo, you have to keep them because it's something that's invaluable. You can bring in really any quarterback when you have this kind of talent, and the quarterback can have actually time to throw the ball and develop. And, whether it's Mariota or whether it's somebody with a stronger arm, having this kind of protection and, having it as ingrown talent, it's really important. So definitely, I would say make sure to save money for those guys. Let's see here. I'll take a look at some of the other stuff that's been happening. Okay, so I want to talk about Kirk Cousins to the Vikings. Like that's fine. I mean, he got a huge deal. It was like 3 years, 84 million. And he's a decent player. I mean, I'm around like the Washington area, and so I always people talking about Kirk Cousins and stuff. Again, I think he's a serviceable quarterback. I don't know like if he's the kind of guy that you want to build your franchise around. He's a solid player. He's not I don't think he's a game changer. I don't think he's the kind of guy that he's not like a Peyton Manning or a Tom Brady or even somebody like a Carson Wentz. So I think if the Vikings have a nice roster already. Like they don't need a ton of stuff. If they think that he can take them to that next level with the roster they already have, then by all means go sign him. And if you have the space and you feel like that's your biggest need, I don't think that team has a lot of needs. But again, I think that when you spend that kind of money on a guy that's an above average, serviceable player, you're taking money away from other positions. And again, we'll see what happens with them, but I don't necessarily think it's going to, it's automatically a bad sign because it's so much money. And Cousins is a solid player, but I don't know who they have coming up on contract, but you're taking money away in the future. So like, I think he makes their team better, but Case Keenum did a pretty solid job. I mean, it was actually kind of surprising. So, I mean, Cousins is probably an upgrade over Keenum, but I guess we'll see. I don't necessarily have a problem with that deal. Let me take a look at some of the other stuff that I was a little confused about. So Alex Smith going to the Redskins. Alex Smith is interesting to me. Because he's a solid player. He's a solid, serviceable starter. But the problem is that every year he starts off so strong and his teams win and everyone gets super excited, right? Like everyone says, oh, Alex Smith, this is the year he's breaking out. And then as the year goes on, and this is something that Colin Cowherd has been pushing for years, and I'm a huge fan of the guy. So, but if you notice, I mean, his teams always drop off. So everyone looked at the Chiefs last year. They slaughtered the Patriots on opening night. And everyone was saying, oh, the Chiefs this is their year. And then every single season, he has a drop off. And it's kind of interesting that he's been on a lot of winning teams. The one season that he was on a team that went to the Super Bowl, he was replaced by a guy with a stronger arm. And to me, that's sort of a red flag because, Alex Smith is he's an accurate guy. He can scramble. He's a good leader. He seems like a, kind of a quiet locker room guy. I've seen an interview with him. He's pretty quiet. But I don't know if he has the arm strength and physical abilities to maintain it. I think he would have to go to a situation where you maximize the amount of warm air and like not snow and not cold weather, not wind. And again, Washington is not the place to do that. You have to go to Philadelphia and New York, both of which have basically outdoor stadiums where you're going to struggle to throw in December. Cowboy, you go to Dallas and that's fine. But even Washington, so again, I think when he was, with the Chiefs and, I think it was an okay fit. And I think that, they always had sort of a good running game and, Andy Reid's a really solid quarterback coach, but I just don't know if I understand why the Redskins, were willing to give up, Kirk Cousins, who I think is probably a better option at this point than Alex Smith. I don't see how Alex Smith is an upgrade over Kirk Cousins. And like, I love Alex Smith. I'm not taking anything away from him, but this is no longer a league where you can win with a guy with a weak arm, unfortunately. And I mean, even guys like Dak Prescott, who are, considered game managers, Dak Prescott has a pretty strong arm. I mean, his arm's pretty, his arm's better than Alex Smith's. So it's just something where I don't necessarily understand that sort of move. And like, I mean, the Skins are in a division where they seem to be pretty competitive every single season. But I don't know. I don't know if this move makes them any better. So, and I mean, they also lost like half of their roster, it seems like, or not half, but they lost a lot of guys. I mean, Terrell Pryor was obviously a bust. They lost Breland. I think they lost, what's his name? So Zach Brown. I think they lost him as well. Or I mean, maybe he's still a free agent. I'm not sure if they lost him yet, but this is interesting. Oh, so the Seahawks have given restricted free agent Dion Jordan a first-round tender. Now, if no one remembers who Dion Jordan is, is. Think back to the 2013 draft, where the Dolphins loved this guy so much that they were willing to give up basically, I think they gave up their like 12th pick and their 54th pick or something that they had gotten for Vontae Davis. They gave up those and moved up to grab this guy at number 3. And he was an athletic freak. I remember that was the year basically where all these guys were just like superb athletes and they were all supposed to become amazing. And then all but Ziggy Ansah basically were busts. And it was kind of funny. Jordan was like a raw guy coming out of college. I think he went to maybe Oregon or something. I don't remember where he went. But he basically leapt up draft boards after the combine. And then he got into a whole host of problems off the field. And he was never really able to put it together on the field. And as a result, he sort of fell off the map. I think a lot of people sort of forgotten about him by now. I'm surprised that the Seahawks put a first-round tender on him. I mean, like, I don't know who would match that. I don't think anyone would really match that. But isn't that like aren't they like giving him a bunch of money? Doesn't a first-round tender mean you get like a bunch of money? How did he play last year? I wasn't following anymore. I knew he had gone to the Seahawks. Let me take a look because, again, that's like a blast in the past. That's kind of nuts, honestly, if he can get that. So he played 5 games and 4 sacks. Oh, he more than doubled his career sack total in those 5 games. That's funny. That draft was like, side note, that draft was pathetic. Let me take a look. What kind of snaps was he getting? Let's see here. Maybe they decided to keep him, and that just because Michael Bennett. What am I talking about? Yeah, maybe they decided to keep him because Bennett's gone now. Yeah, he was pretty decent. That's kind of interesting. I'd forgotten he was a person almost. I mean, he had some serious problems off the field from what I remember. He was suspended for a really long time. Let me take a look. He was suspended. Yeah, performance enhancing. He kept doing. It looks like he kept doing steroid type stuff again and again and again. And finally, I mean, I'm not sure if the Dolphins. Yeah, they released him, and so then the Seahawks signed him. Man, I mean, it looks like he sort of turned his career around, I guess. I mean, if you can turn 5 games and 4 sacks and like 130 snaps into a first-round tender, I mean, good for you. I don't know how much the tender is on a first round, but I would imagine it's fairly high. Let's see here. Also, it looks like Ryan Tannehill had his contract restructured so that they could bring in more cap space, or they can bring in more guys with, because they have more cap space. I think the Dolphins are, I like Tannehill. Obviously he wasn't playing last year, but I think the Dolphins, it seems like they're always like 1 or 2 pieces away. And they never seem to be able to get those 1 or 2 pieces. So we'll see if they can sort of put it together this year. Tannehill's an upgrade over the quarterbacks they had. And young guy, Kenny Drake, looked pretty good last year. So I guess we'll see. Obviously Landry's gone, but I mentioned, he did have some locker room questions going into last season. And, I'm not sure if that ever materialized in anything, but I know that he has had character stuff in the past, I think. Let's see here. But yeah, so the Dolphins might be clearing cap space for something. I mean, they dropped Sue, who was on a massive contract. And then obviously Landry's not there anymore either. So let's see here. There aren't really a lot of big name receivers anymore though that are out there, I don't think. Let me take a look at a free agency tracker. No, that's not the one I wanted. I think there's usually an NFL.com. NFL.com, yeah, there we go. So this is, the tracker and NFL.com usually puts up. So let me take a look and see who's considering Sue. Yeah, Sue's still playing at a very high level. He just doesn't have the numbers that he used to. Tyrann Mathieu. Okay, so he has Tyrann Mathieu is released, it says, mainly because of a high cap number and a great backup behind him. Who's the backup though? Didn't they lose? They lost Tony Jefferson. Who's his backup? Buda, the rookie guy, Buda Baker. Is that who they're going to start now? I mean, I don't, know who else they have back there. Deion Buchanan was a joke, so I don't, not exactly. Okay. Oh, they have some good defensive backs. Yeah, there's absolutely no reason for them to need that high cap number. They have, yeah. I mean, so I get it. Yeah, that makes sense. They got Tyvon Branch, who's been playing really well. Bethea is still playing at a high level and age like million. And then their rookie Buda Baker played pretty well too. It looks like, and he was a Pro Bowler for special teams, I believe. So, yeah, I get why they don't need to spend that kind of money. This is interesting. Wait, did I already know about this? I don't. Apparently, wait, no, that already happened. What am I talking about? Yeah, Robert Quinn to the Dolphins. I forgot about that. I forgot that happens. That's a good deal for the Dolphins. Quinn's in his prime, and he's shown ability to be a really above average player. He had one really good year, and he's been pretty productive rest of his career too. I mean, that's a pretty good trade. I forgot that happened. Let's see here. Yeah, I mean, Quinn's had some pretty strong years. I think he was a candidate for Defensive Player of the Year a couple years back as well. That was the year Kuechly won it. Luke Kuechly. Quinn had 19 sacks. That was a pretty good season for him. So yeah, I think it's a good pickup. Take a look at some of my other notes that I had written down here. So I mean, the Ravens also signed John Brown to a 1-year deal. I don't know about that. I mean, that's fine. John Brown looked pretty good in that 1 year he had with Arizona, but I mean, that was 1 year, and he's looked pretty bad every other year. He's played it's not for lack of opportunities. He just doesn't look very good. So, and even his 1 year that was really good, it was like there was a lot of big plays. I mean, you could also say that his production might have dropped off with the quarterback talent, but again, I don't mean if you give him a 1-year tryout and he can show that he can play that high level again, fine. I mean, I'd rather give Ryan Grant though the more years. I disagree with people who would say that John Brown should get more years, just because Ryan Grant has taken advantage of his opportunities, and John Brown seems to have not done so. So that is that's something where, I mean, if he can prove that he can be explosive again, that's great. I don't think I would give a ton of years to a guy who's looks like a 1-year wonder. Okay. I wonder who would sign Julius Thomas at this point. It seems like a kind of guy the Ravens might sign last minute. They've done that a lot with all the older tight ends that catch passes. Like they did it with Owen Daniels and Dallas Clark and stuff. I mean, more recently, Ben Watson. We'll see. I like the idea of Trey Burton to the Ravens. That would have been a good move. All right. So nothing's happening right now. Let me take a look at some more of my notes. So another signing that I saw, and I'm not sure how I feel about this one either, is Jonathan Stewart is going to the Giants. He's a good running back. He has injury issues though. That's it. Oh yeah, I mean the Torrey Smith trade happened a couple days ago, but Panthers traded for Torrey Smith. But I'm going back to Jonathan Stewart. He's a good player. He's past his prime. He regressed this past year, and he has a history of really bad injuries. He's never been able to stay healthy. I don't, necessarily know how I feel about that. If he's healthy and he's playing well, he's a pretty good player. I mean, he and D'Angelo Williams used to tear stuff up together. But, he's played, he hasn't played a full season, looks like since 2011. And he hasn't had 1,000 yards since the only time he did it in 2009. So, I mean, again, I just, if he can stay healthy, he'll be fine. But, I mean, he did regress this past season. I wonder because, I mean, looking at McCaffrey, he was pretty solid. But he's obviously not the kind of guy that you can have as a feature back. So I wonder who the Panthers are planning to bring in. So Marcus Peters trade officially went through. That was really interesting. That's kind of a surprise. It's always a surprise when you see these guys really talented and really productive get traded. You always wonder, you got to wonder what's going on in the locker room. Apparently, this guy was really bad for the locker room. Apparently, he was causing a lot of issues. And I mean, I had no idea. I never really heard any of those types of things about him. I mean, he's an interception, fiend. I mean, he's really a ball hawk. So it's kind of a shame that, he couldn't get the character stuff out of the way, because I mean, he was looking like he was going to really, really take that defense to the next level. So Jadeveon Clowney's option just became guaranteed. That was expected. Clowney shown improvement every single season. He was really good this past year. And it looks like J.J. Watt can't stay healthy anymore. You got to hang on to Clowney at this point. All right. The Texans have a pretty good defensive line still. I like what they've been doing too. They've really been doing well building their defense. Let's see here. Let's keep checking Twitter. Let me go back through my notes again. Not really much happened at this point, so I guess I'll just stick with more live stuff at this time. So the Saints are apparently letting Brandon Coleman walk. Whatever. I mean, they have a ton of receivers there, which is, it's getting like to become a cluster there, it looks like. Okay, so they retain their center. Texans retain their center. I'm getting a lot of Texans updates. That's because I follow Aaron Wilson on here. I think he really does a good job with updates, but he's also a Texans fan. So Torrey Smith to the Panthers. I kind of like that. I mean, Smith is a really nice deep threat. He was in Baltimore for a while. I love the guy. He's a really stand-up guy. He's a solid player. He's got to be in the right system, and he can be really explosive. And then they put him in a system like San Francisco, where it was a very run-heavy system, and it was basically just run the ball and then throw it to Anquan Boldin every single down. Those were the only two options in that offense, and so people sort of forgot how good Smith was. And then he sort of got lost last year, unfortunately, in Philly. But I think he can still probably play at a very high level. And we'll see if Cam Newton can utilize him a little bit better. Because Cam Newton, I mean, out of, they don't have as many weapons there as they did in Philadelphia. And, I think Torrey Smith could benefit from having the run game too. So that could be kind of interesting. I think it could be a good fit. And then the Eagles got Darryl Worley, who's a pretty solid cornerback. So I think I like the trade for both sides. I'm not sure how Worley did last year. He was pretty good, though. He's been pretty good, it seems like, so far. Let me take a look. The Eagles' defense is still looking pretty good. Let's see here. Worley's been okay. Not great, but he's been okay. It's not a bad pickup for the Eagles. Third round pick a couple years back. So I think, third round pick 2016 for the Panthers. Let's see here. Okay, so the Bengals. Okay, so Andre Smith, who I forgot existed, apparently is signing 2 years, and it can anywhere from $8 million to $10.2 million with the Cardinals. Andre Smith. That is a name from the past. Has he been in the league? I don't remember if he has. Yeah, he's been there. That's interesting. Yeah, he went over to Minnesota and then came back to Cincinnati. He's basically one of those phone booth guys. He's basically limited to right tackle. He's a mauler. I mean, he's not very quick, and but he's really strong, and he's a pretty good run blocker. 2 years, $10 million is. I mean, it depends. If he can stay on the field. He's had some health concerns in the past, but if he can stay on the field, he's a pretty decent right tackle. I mean, I could also move him into guard, put him in right guard or something like that, and I think that'd be a pretty good move for him. Let's see here. Another tweet. Oh, and the Aqib Talib trade just went through as well. Okay, the Patriots deal with Rex Burkhead is 3 years, mostly guaranteed money. I mean, he was supposed to be better than he did last year, what I thought. I hadn't even heard of him before last year. He was one of those Patriots, seven-headed monster. Let's see. He seems like he's a decent pass catcher. I know that Amendola is leaving New England as well. I think Amendola is leaving for Oakland, I believe. Malcolm Butler also. I forgot to mention that. I forgot to mention Malcolm Butler. Whoops. That's a pretty good signing. Again, I need to check and see what Butler's age is. But I mean, Malcolm Butler's become a pretty formidable corner, pretty reliable. I think 5 years, 61 millions. I mean, again, it's hard to find one of these big cornerback contracts that have worked out. So I'm always hesitant with these corner contracts. You've seen so many of them bust. It's become almost like expected. Like I remember Nadia Asamoah, whatever the guy's name was from the Raiders, who was a lockdown guy, went to Philadelphia and on like a huge contract, and then basically just failed. And then you saw the same thing with like the guy from Byron Maxwell. You saw him, sign like a big deal in Philly, and that failed. I mean, you look at these big corner contracts. Sam Shields for the Packers, awful contract as well. So, I mean, I always am hesitant with these cornerbacks because at any point their play could just drop off. I mean, it's happened with all of them. Revis, for example, is the newest one. Darrelle Revis played at a high level for a very long time, and then his production basically just dropped off one day. Same with Joe Hayden. Happened with Joe Hayden as well. Joe Hayden got a huge contract and was playing at a very high level for a lot of his career, and then whoops, and he just dropped off, and the Browns actually ended up releasing him after giving him one of the biggest contracts. So I mean, there's a lot of guys you can point to and say maybe they should have gotten that many years, or maybe they should have not gotten that much guaranteed money and stuff, and maybe we should have looked at the scheme fit because again these corners, if they go to the wrong system, and it's definitely a very very complex position, and certain teams play certain situations differently. So what's new on the Texans free agency? So let me take a look. They basically made Clowney's they guaranteed basically Clowney's 5th-year option. They got their guard back. Let me take a look what the guy's name was. Whatever guard, they basically got their restricted tender on him, and it went through. Let's see, what was the guy's name? Okay, Greg Manns. Yeah, they got him back. And then I don't think they've been super active so far from what I've seen. Let's see here. I haven't seen a ton from them yet. Yeah, I don't see much on them yet. Let's see here. I think yeah, they haven't really done a whole lot yet, but it seems like they managed to maintain most of their guys. Apparently JJ Watt and JJ Watt's trying to recruit Honey Badger to Texans. Oh, the Texans signed Aaron Colvin. Oh, that's a good signing. I didn't even notice that for some reason. That's a really good signing, corner Aaron Colvin. I like that signing. He was pretty solid for the Jags. Really good cornerback, really underrated. And 4 years, $34 million. That's pretty good. Imagine if they get imagine if they get like Tyrann Mathieu as well. That'd be a really beastly defensive backfield right there. Like that'd be a really, really good group of guys. So yeah, Aaron Colvin's also improved every single season, which is good. And then Honey Badger just basically got released just because of his contract was so big, and they already have so much depth there. So yeah, and it looks like Kevin Johnson for the Texans is basically just a bust at this point. So Colvin will be an upgrade. Add some youth as well, which will be good. I think that's a good signing for the Texans. I think that's a good use of money. Let's see here. And then let's see. Yeah, so Clowney's staying as well, which is good. And they'll have to work out a long-term deal with him, but I don't see why they wouldn't. I think they know that they have to keep him. They really need offensive line help. Offensive line is something that they really need to prioritize. I don't know what they're planning to do with their offensive line. Their offense in general is pretty abysmal, outside of mainly just receivers. So, I mean, Deshaun Watson will also come back healthy next season too. Deshaun Watson looked really good in limited time. Yeah, I wonder who's going to sign Eric Ebron. That'd be, that's interesting to look at. Wonder if anyone's going to sign him. I mean, he's really just shown no ability to do anything. I mean, and it's not like he hasn't had opportunities, like I said. Like, there were not a lot of other tight ends in Detroit. He had Matt Stafford, a guy with a rocket arm and good accuracy, and a clutch player. And he had Calvin Johnson, retire in the middle, and yet it still seemed like he, just couldn't break out. So again, I don't know who's going to take Ebron, but it'd be interesting to somebody to sign him to maybe like a veterans minimum, see if he can actually show the potential that he showed back in the draft. But I can actually see the Texans being an interesting spot for Ebron. I don't know if they do that, but they definitely are sort of weak in the tight end area. Depends on how well Fedorowicz, or whatever the guy's name is, if he comes back strong, they might not, need another tight end. But I mean, he was injured for a lot of the year last year, and I would be concerned about that. Take a look at his numbers as well. He was somebody that showed pretty solid improvement for a while. But I'm actually, is he a free agent? Oh no, they re-signed him. Okay. So he's still on contract, and he showed definitely some improvement. So that could be an interesting spot for Ebron. I wonder who else is going to be announced. I mean, it's pretty much slowed down at this point. A lot of the trades are sort of going through, and take a look at some individual stuff. Wait, what is it? All right. Let's see. All right. Take a look at my notes and see if I have anything else down here I want to talk about. So I should talk about the Rams, because it's very clear sort of what the Rams are trying to do at this point. And I like it for the most part. I do think they sort of maybe goofed a little bit with the Sammy Watkins deal. I mean, they traded for him, and they gave up I forget what they gave up for him, but I mean, like, he only lasted a year, and now he just signed a big contract with the Chiefs. So obviously he was sort of a miss, but Robert Woods was obviously a hit. They have Cooper Kupp there. And then they basically revamped their defense, it seems like. So they got Marcus Peters and Aqib Talib. I don't know how they plan on making that work, because both of those guys have some serious character problems. Apparently. Let's see here. Okay, so apparently so the McKinnon deal was announced wrongly. Apparently it's only 4 years and $30 million. That's way different than 4 years, $37 million, which is, how's there that much of a difference for a guy that's a change of pace back? This deal still baffles me. I just don't understand why. Just because you have the money doesn't mean you should just spend it. It kind of bugs me a little bit. It just shows poor management, and it's a reason that a lot of these teams lose constantly and can never seem to sort of create any sort of dynasty type thing or have any consistency. The teams that are the ones that lose more often are the ones that give giant contracts to guys who should be making not even half that much. So it's like the Browns do it all the time. And apparently they've been doing it today as well. They're giving like offensive linemen that are random and probably below average, bunch of guaranteed money. So it's just, I don't know. I just, like, again, I have nothing against Jerick McKinnon. He's a pretty solid player. He's pretty fun to watch. He's a good change of pace. You shouldn't get 4 years, $30 million as a change of pace. I just think that's overspending. And I think that there were some other running backs out there that might have fit the 49ers better. I mean, Crowell is, a good power back. I think, he's somebody that they could have targeted. Like, if they didn't want Carlos Hyde, I mean, there were better options. Chris Ivory is vastly underrated. I think they could have gotten a good deal for him. He ended up on the Bills. So, I mean, even Dion Lewis. I think Dion Lewis is a better player in terms of being maybe a feature back than Jerick McKinnon. So, like, it's something where I just don't understand why you'd spend your money that way. So the Bills, Tyrod Taylor for 3rd round pick to the Browns. That's a good deal. I always like that. I think it's a good use of a 3rd round pick for the Browns. And I think that Tyrod Taylor can, be the stopgap for whoever they bring in. It really sucks that they had to get rid of Kaiser. I really think that they wasted a guy with a lot of potential. But I mean, I think they're doing the right thing by bringing in Tyrod Taylor. So I'm assuming they're going to draft a guy, either with the number 1 or number 4. And Taylor's a lot better than whoever else they would bring in order to just take the hits as a veteran stopgap. I think Taylor's a really high character guy. I think he sort of knows what his role is going to be there, which is to just let the young guy play behind you, and I like that deal. So Todd Davis is back with the Broncos, linebacker. That's fine. So Rashaan Melvin, I forgot about that. I forgot that guy was a person too. He's a restricted free agent apparently, or just a regular free agent. Not much is, it's slowed down for the most part nowadays. It starts to slow down about an hour in. And then usually probably by about 6 o'clock, it'll start picking up again. So we'll see if anything new happens. Take a look at something real quick. All right. So let me go take a look at let me go see if I can find some sort of rumor mill and see if there's any like rumor type stuff going around. It's interesting. Pro Football Talk is usually a pretty good spot for that. Let me go there. So the Dolphins managed to create 17.8 million in cap space just with the combination of releasing, I think Sue and Thomas, restructuring Tannehill and restructuring Rashad Jones. That's quite a bit of cap space. I don't know if they were cap strapped. So okay, the Giants apparently traded for Alec Ogletree. Ogletree's kind of interesting. He's an okay player. He's had 2 like really good years and 2 really bust years. So again, we'll see what he does for the Giants. He could make them better. Thomas Rawls did not get a tender. So Thomas Rawls, if your team needs a running back to get injured, and then put on IR, if you guys need to use that IR spot, go ahead and sign Thomas Rawls because he can occupy that spot within the preseason. Let's see what else has happened. Half these guys I've never even. Oh, so this is interesting. The Jets. I don't know if not a lot of people know who this guy is. Quincy Enunwa, but he's a big body receiver. The Jets. Actually, he had a pretty good year a couple years back, and I think he could be pretty helpful for that team. He's kind of a big body guy, good across the middle, kind of sort of like a Anquan Bolden-esque type of guy. And he apparently was given a 2nd round tender. So, and all you Bengals fans, you guys kept the worst punter in the league, Kevin Huber. He's you know what? Kevin Huber's shanked punts are always fun to watch. Let's see here. All right. So the Bengals and the Raiders are talking about trading for Vontaze Burfict. Why? Why would the Raiders want him? I mean, again, like I like Burfict, but I don't see how he helps. I mean, he's such a locker room problem, and he's always a threat to get suspended for something that probably would surprise people. Terrence Brooks staying with the Jets. That's pretty good. I mean, he was a former Ravens guy. The Ravens gave up on him, and he's sort of revamped his career. I'm not sure. Like, I'm not sure. Like I would have to sort of know who you are, and like we can set up a debate for another time. But I'm a little bit hesitant to just let somebody on my channel. But we can set up one for another time. Sorry you're bored. I'm a little bit hesitant to just let somebody that I have no idea who it is on, because I don't want to get the channel shut down for somebody saying something crazy. Let's see here. Do you have like a video that you could show me of you talking, just so like I know who you are, and then I could probably invite you in. I'd rather just like Twitter message you the link if you want. I also need to see what you sound like too. I mean, again, like you can, all right, yeah. What's your Twitter handle? I guess I'll send it to you. Whatever. I can always just kick if it gets really bad. I just don't really have like a call screener or anything like that. I'm more than happy to debate, but I don't really have like a call screening type thing. Do you have like a Twitter thing I could send you something at? Okay. Yeah. I mean, we'll have to set something up for another time then, because I'd rather just like screen calls before I get them. And yeah, like I do have Instagram. I could send you, but like again, I would need to see what you sound like. I'm just a little bit hesitant early on, but we can definitely set up a debate. I mean, I have a lot of free time nowadays, so. But right now, I just kind of want to go through deals. Let me just take a look. I think I'm going to pass right now. But like if you want to send me an email or something, I can drop you my email and we can do it another time. Anyways, let's see. Oh, there's some new tweets. So the 49ers signed Fusco, Brandon Fusco, the guard. No. The Falcons signed former 49ers. Yeah. Josh Shitton is still in the league. Really? How old is Josh Shitton now? He used to be really good. Let's take a look. Where was Josh Shitton last year? That guy was a legendary guard back in like the early 2010s. He's pretty much dropped off, but I think it's older. Okay, so Seantrel Henderson was so Texans signed Seantrel Henderson. Wow, like I thought that guy would be out of the league. He was really not a good player. The former Bills right tackle. Yeah, he was awful. He basically just fell off the map. I remember he beat out that other guy that was awful, Cyrus Kouandjio. Bills had some real problems with linemen for a while. Where was Henderson still in Buffalo last year? I think. Yeah, he was. Ugh. Yeah, it's not a good. Yeah, he's been awful. I don't know why the Texans are signing him. Maybe for line depth. That's fine. I mean, honestly, their line's so bad, he might end up being an upgrade over whoever they have there currently. So can't really blame the Texans for trying. Texans line is really just sad. Let's see. No problem, man. I mean, like I said, we can debate. I'd rather like have a way to screen the call first. Let's see here. So the Raiders are tendering all of their guys. Okay, the Buccaneers just signed Chandler Catanzaro to be their kicker. Yet another guy that they have in there that's not a second-round pick. That was just sad. I don't know why teams draft kickers high in the draft. It almost never works. I mean, Janikowski was like the one time where it worked, I guess. But like, I mean, for example, Nugent, that didn't work. Obviously, Aguayo, it didn't work. So not really much new is happening right now. Probably starting to get a little boring around here. It's because things have really slowed down. Yeah, this is always the sort of the lull in it because usually the first wave of signings happens, within the first like hour or so. Let's see here. Let's go to Roto World. Maybe Roto World has some stuff. Crap, I typed it in wrong. Let's type it in for me anyways. All right, here we go. Let's take a look and see if they have any player updates. NFL, Player News. Roto World's one of the nicest spots to get updates. Yeah, Thomas Rawls. I joke about him because I remember that year where Lynch was injured and Rawls played kind of okay, and everyone got really excited about him. They were like, "Oh, the Seahawks found this awesome guy," and then he just sucked forever after that. It was really kind of interesting. Yeah, that was sad. Brandon Coleman could be yeah. Like, okay, so I mean, Brandon Coleman obviously did not get a tender from the Saints, but he could be somebody that a team that's doesn't have like a ton of red zone ability, or a team that's looking for a really tall guy to put in there. Brandon Coleman could be a good option for a lot of teams. Like I think that could be a pretty good signing. I mean, the Saints don't really need a guy like that right now. The Saints are just loaded in terms of pass catchers at this point. But I think that could be if a team's looking for some wide receiver help, I don't see why that's not a good signing. I think that could be a pretty good signing. I wonder if Julius Thomas will have a market. I wonder if people will go after him. He could be one of those guys that gets signed as like in the training camp if there's like an injury or something. So I love Solder. I like him a lot. He's been really, really underrated for the Patriots for years. I mean, that being said, he's going to be 30, I think, when that deal takes effect. And it's a 4-year, $62 million deal. And, I would worry about a drop off in talent after maybe the second or third year, or, maybe after like just the second year. So I think the Giants became better for this season. Eric Flowers was a mess. And they're probably just happy to, move on from him. But, I do worry about, a guy that's going to be 30, getting a 4-year, $62 million deal. And I think if the Giants are trying to win right now, then they got their guy. But, we'll see if he holds up. He's been pretty consistent. I mean, he hasn't had a ton of injury issues. But he also, he is older, and linemen tend to just, unless you're somebody like Andrew Whitworth, who was never physically a beast or anything. Andrew Whitworth was never very physically capable of doing stuff. But he was always so smart, and he's such a technician that he was able to become really good anyways. So, I think Solder's an upgrade. But I mean, if the Giants are going to a Super Bowl run, but I mean, that's a big statement since they went 3-13 last year. And I think Eli will be more comfortable, with a good left tackle. And I mean, they signed Jonathan Stewart too. So like, if he can stay healthy, that's probably a little bit of a running back upgrade. And I mean, Ingram, looked really good at tight end last year. Ogletree, probably an upgrade over, some of the guys they had on defense there. So, I mean, they definitely have a better looking roster right now. But a Super Bowl run after a 3-13 season is that's asking a lot. So, like, I think, they have to be sure that Eli, can still be that guy, because they do have a high draft pick. But I think that Eli will be a lot better without Eric Flowers doing the Toro and putting the red cape out and letting the guys throw. And I talked earlier about, I love Teddy Bridgewater. I think Teddy Bridgewater, I mean, I looked at his deal, and it's got up to, I think, 1 year, $15 million in incentives, and he couldn't be a higher character guy. He's probably one of the highest character guys at that position, and people just sort of forgot about him. And I would say he's probably could be a front runner for comeback player of the year. And McCown played well last year. I mean, he had a pretty good statistical season, but we saw what that happened, you know, when that happened in Chicago, and then he went to Tampa and, you know, became Josh McCown again. So, I mean, if they want to, you know, have sort of a competition, you know, then McCown's probably a good guy to bring in. And if they're not sure exactly what they have in Teddy Bridgewater, because Bridgewater hasn't been on the field since like 2015, right? So, you know, we don't know if he's even going to be remotely the same physically as he was. And I think in terms of Davis Webb, I think the move to Geno Smith instead of Webb, I think that might be a bad sign for Webb. I don't really know much about Webb, honestly. But I think, you know, there's got to be a reason why they went to Geno Smith instead of Webb when they pulled that stunt last year. So, and yeah, Bridgewater hasn't played since 2015, I don't think. He's only played 2 seasons. I mean, the character concerns are never going to be there with him. He's a really, you know, he's a pretty high character guy. Like, he's always going to put in the work, and he's always going to be a good leader. But you know, after all those injuries, how rusty is he going to be? Because Peyton Manning, one of the greatest, probably the greatest regular season quarterback of all time, you know, a guy who had really a nice arm and great accuracy. And, you know, when you watch him play that first season with the Broncos, his passes were really, really hilarious. I mean, it was just awful. And he only missed 1 year. So, you know, Teddy Bridgewater coming, you know, only playing 2 years in the league and, you know, and then being out for a full 2 years and going to a new, you know, situation and a team that's not very good. I mean, you know, it's definitely something where I think you have to bring in another guy like McCown also. If you're planning on having Bridgewater, you know, sort of compete and want to improve his game or bring people back, or like, you know, or just like, you know, sort of bring himself back to prominence, I think you got to bring in competition for him. Yeah, I mean, I don't really know much about Webb. I from what I heard, it was a reach at the time, the pick. But I mean, he could be a part of the future. So Eli to me is a lot like what, you know, as a Ravens fan, I'm seeing Flacco and Eli have sort of the same issue, which is that they're not mobile enough at this point, and they can't always make the throws and you know, have the accuracy with those throws in the same way that, you know, they used to be able to, and as a result, they become sitting ducks. Although I do think that Solder will help a lot. I think that Eli definitely showed some regression, you know, and I don't think, you know, Peyton Manning and Tom Brady can get away with it because they have a quick release and they played in systems that were quick timing, and it was pretty, you know, the systems were very consistent, you know. But I think Eli's doesn't have that same kind of accuracy. Same with a guy like Flacco, and I think Matt Stafford eventually might fall victim to this too, because he's not very mobile either. But you know, I think Eli can start still. Sure, I think he can be a starter. I don't think I mean, he could be top 20. I guess it just depends on who the other starters are. I don't think he's elite by any stretch of the imagination. Rosen to the Giants. It could be. I mean, I think the Browns are probably looking at taking him number 1, you'd think. And will Tyrod Taylor be the best Browns quarterback? Yeah. I mean, I honestly, how can you? No, I would say Manziel probably still has that one, or Spurgeon Wynn. How can, you know, Tyrod Taylor got nothing on Spurgeon Wynn. He was the greatest for sure. There's like a quiz you can take on Sporkle. It's like, name all the Browns starting quarterbacks, and like some of those guys like were just like, who is this? And that was like half the quiz. It's really funny. They've had so many starting quarterbacks. It's insane. I think Tyrod Taylor is a pretty good player. I like Tyrod Taylor a lot. High character guy. I think he'll be pretty good. But if he's your best quarterback in franchise history, then you might just want to like quit and like move to Baltimore or something. I don't know. Like, that's bad. So let's see here. I don't think the Eagles are going to trade Nick Folk. I don't see why they would. They could, but I mean, you know, do they want him as insurance? Yeah, and he just won the Super Bowl for him. And like, their roster didn't get any worse, it doesn't seem like. Actually, it seems like it's actually gotten a little bit better. And they added, you know, some defensive backfield help. They have Michael Bennett now. Their defense looks better. Like, I mean, are they going to trade him in the first place? I think, like, there's a lot of, so I think the 2 quarterbacks that you have to look at a market for right now in terms of trades are probably, you know, I mean, the 2 guys in Denver. So, you know, Simeon and Lynch. I don't think Lynch has a ton of value. I think Simeon could have a little bit of value. And I mean, Foles obviously does have value, but does he have enough value where you're willing to give up your solid backup? You know, like Wentz is a solid player, but I mean, you know, he had injury stuff last year. You know, you have a really strong roster. I don't know why you would want to get rid of your strong backup quarterback. So again, I think it depends. Do they think that they can get something that's worthwhile for him? Or is it too risky to trade away that kind of depth? Because their roster is really strong. So I just, you know, I guess it depends on what kind of value actually has. And I don't think that the Browns would trade their 4th pick for him. I think that'd be kind of nutty. I don't even know if you'd get a first round pick for Foles, maybe like a second, or, you know, at the most. I don't see him garnering a first round pick. So, you know, I guess we'll say I mean, I also, you know, again, like Foles was good in, you know, small dose, and he did have a breakout year a couple of years back. I still remember that year he had 27 touchdowns, 2 interceptions, but he's been very inconsistent. And, you know, he showed he can win in the playoffs, but, you know, I don't think that, you know, he's shown enough yet in order to garner a first round pick. Let's see. So Alex Smith, have officially been traded to Washington. That's become official. Why do you want Jordy Nelson in the Browns? Why would they want that? This is the kind of stuff they do. They did it with Dwayne Bowe too. I remember that crap. Let's see. Ravens have tendered all of their exclusive rights guys. So Ravens are probably going to bring back Alex Collins. They got Owasso coming back, Skura, Stanley Jean-Baptiste. Okay, so here the Texans contract with Seantrel Henderson is looking a little bit maybe better than what I thought. I mean, he's definitely somebody that it has a maximum value of $4 million. And I wonder what the minimum value is. It a veteran's minimum? Okay, so basically he'll lose money if he gets suspended. So he has to be like active on the active roster, and he'll get like incentives. So basically, they're trying to keep him from doing stupid stuff, because that's kind of what he has a tendency to do, Seantrel Henderson. I think that's one of the reasons why he dropped in the draft as well. So, man, he looked like he had potential in his rookie year with the Bills, but I mean, he couldn't stay on the field, and he looked like he had a lot of mental, you know, mistakes on the field and stuff, and he was definitely had character concerns. So, I mean, but, you know, again, the Texans' offensive line is just that bad. So, I mean, he could be an upgrade. I think incentivizing him to stay on the field is probably the good way to go with his contract. I'll be right back. Just give me 1 second. All right, so new tweet coming up. Okay, so the Cowboys are interested in Sue, and the Seahawks as well. I mean, Seahawks make sense. The Seahawks are always looking for these line guys. So, I mean, they traded for Sheldon Richardson. I don't know if he's going back there. Obviously, at Bennett, Deion Jordan's going back as well, it seems like. But that would be kind of interesting. Again, like if you're releasing Richard Sherman because you want to clear up anger in the locker room, I don't know why you would then bring in a guy like Sue. I mean, Sue's not the worst, but I mean, he's not an easy guy to deal with from what I've seen. So, I mean, I still don't understand why they were ready to move on from Sherman. I get that he had some injuries and stuff. I don't know like what the extent of what the tension was in the locker room there either, but I guess it was really bad if they felt like they had to get rid of him, when he was still really. We'll see who Sue goes to. Both of those teams I think are pretty decent fits for Sue. So Luke Wilson is visiting the Panthers, and I guess maybe somebody that's important to somebody. Let's see. This is just so they broke down the contract for Jerick McKinnon to the 49ers. Holy, this is really ridiculous. So his base for his first 2 years, his base salary is fully guaranteed, which is $4.2 million and then $5.5 million. He's basically this is a really long and extended contract with a lot of guaranteed money. Like for a guy that's a change of pace guy, I just don't really understand. This is pretty ridiculous. I mean, I guess I don't understand the logic sometimes. Josh Sitton, he was on the Bears last year. He was going to visit the Dolphins. It could be a pretty good fit. I don't know what the Dolphins line looks like, but they've done a pretty crappy job drafting linemen, so could be a good fit. Let's see here. What else is going on? New tweet. Okay, so yeah, the Case Keenum, that was already sort of announced. The Case Keenum move is just it's just a 2-year deal, $36 million. I think there's some incentive-based stuff in there as well, so that's fine. I mean, Keenum's like Kubiak has experience with him. Kubiak likes him like that. I mean, Keenum showed that he can play at a high level. Like, I mean, he's been okay in his career. He's actually been sort of underrated, but if they feel like he's going to be their stopgap and that neither of the young guys there are the guy, then, I mean, this is a quarterback heavy draft and, like why not just sign him and have him, put him out there and, whether or not you get the guy, if you do manage to get somebody that you think is, the quarterback of the future, he'll have a pretty solid stopgap to learn behind. So I don't see anything wrong with a, hefty 2-year deal. And I think he also makes the Broncos a lot better. Like right off the bat, I think he's better than, obviously, Simeon. Simeon was awful. Osweiler was awful too. And apparently Lynch hasn't shown them anything to justify that first round pick that they spent on him. So, I mean, that's, I think Kubiak, generally, I usually trust him. I think he's done a pretty good job everywhere he's been. So, I think that's probably a good deal. And it's only 2 years. So, it's not like you're locking in. It's not like what the Texans did with Osweiler, where it was 4 years and $72 million without even, talking to the guy. I mean, apparently they didn't even have an interview with him or meet with him. Apparently they just threw the money at him and that worked out perfect. So let's see what else is going on. I've been seeing a lot of people talk about the Kirk Cousins deal being only 3 years. I like that. I like that it's a little bit shorter. It has a ton of money involved in it. It's 3 years, $84 million or something, but that's not bad. That's not the worst you could, like I think that, teams have tried to sign guys to really long extensions in the past. And then it just never seems to work because, you never really know what you're getting. And I think, the longer the contract, the more, obviously the more risky it becomes. So I think like if I were a general manager and I was, looking at something like this, looking at a deal, I think a shorter contract with more money is probably the way I would go because I can always bail out of it if the guy's awful and I can always extend it if the guy's good. And, I don't have to worry as much about, if the guy starts being awful, like in the second year or even in the first year, and then you're stuck with another 4 years of the guy. So like, I like that these deals are they're seeming like they're becoming more normal, which is great. Cause the days of the 6-year tons of money, the days of the Albert Hainsworth type contracts are hopefully done. Like the 7-year, 100 million, 32 guaranteed to basically lay on the ground and not get up in the middle of a play. So I'm glad that those, the contract lengths are starting to get shortened. That's definitely something that needed to happen because guys were really taking advantage of that. Like, for example, Donald Butler, who he was pretty solid on his rookie contract for the Chargers, inside linebacker. And then they signed him to a 7-year, like $49 million extension or something. And then there was a bunch of money guaranteed. And then he just stopped trying because all he wanted was the guaranteed money. And I actually liked him up until that point. And then you watch him just like stop trying. He did that Albert Hainsworth thing. And, that's kind of why you don't want to lock yourself into a guy that long, because especially on their first big contract. So it's definitely something that I'm glad that people are not doing anymore. It's it's good that you see Kirk Cousins, who has shown the ability to play at a high level, getting a lot of money, but it's also in a very short period of time. And I mean, the Vikings have the roster to win right now. So if they think that Cousins is the guy that can help them win right now, and they can still feel really confident in their roster, why not? Why not give the guy a bunch of money for the next couple of years? So the Falcons deal with Brandon Fusco is 3 years, 12.5 or 12.75 million. Not a bad deal. It's a pretty good guard deal. I don't really know much about Brandon Fusco. I think I've seen him on the Robeson interview thing that Brian Robeson does. I love that guy. I think it's something. There's I don't know if you guys watch like stuff on YouTube or anything, but in terms of just like watching like team related videos, but the Vikings have a series where Brian Robinson, he basically just goes around and like teases his teammates and asks them questions and stuff. And it's pretty entertaining. He's a funny guy too. It's a pretty good series, but I think I know a little bit about Fusco from that. I could be wrong though. Was he on the Vikings? I don't even remember at this point. Let me take a look. So he was on the Niners for sure. This is interesting. They might have put him on the Falcons already. Pro Football Focus like really updates their stuff really quickly. Yeah, they already put him on the Falcons. That's kind of nuts. That's really quick. Oh, my internet. Almost positive Fusco was on that team. Yeah, he was on Minnesota. Yeah, he was on that series. Why did I start questioning myself when I said he was on Minnesota? Tweet. Maybe something cool happened finally. I've never heard of this guy. The Texans. Texan viewer. They have signed former Saints offensive lineman Senio Kelemete, 3 years, $12 million, 5.5 guaranteed. I have no idea who that is, so I will go look into it. Apparently, he's been in the league for 6 years, and I've never heard of him. He's been. It looks like he's a. Wait, what position does he play? I started as a tight end. That's weird. Okay, so he started on Arizona, went to New Orleans, backup lineman. Go take a look and see if he did anything. Might not have. I don't know. I mean, he was a Texans lineman, so you gotta take that with a grain of salt. They might have already put him on the. He's a Saints guy. He's going to the Texans. Okay, take a look. See if he's anything. Okay, so this is anyone who takes Pro Football Focus seriously, yeah, it's not very good. His numbers are pretty awful. I don't know. I mean, I've never heard of him. So I mean, I guess the Texans are just, throwing stuff at the wall and seeing what sticks with their line. So, I mean, again, anything could be an upgrade over what they have currently. They really just don't have a good offensive line. Yeah, I guess so. The Seahawks let Jimmy Graham walk, obviously. And then they're letting Luke Wilson walk too. I mean, it says they're looking for a tight end, so they're bringing in Ed Dickson. Ravens fan. I watched Ed Dickson. He can't really block, and he has a problem with drops, and he sometimes doesn't get open. So I mean, he looked okay for 1 year, but he's not a very good player. Like if you're trying to replace Jimmy Graham with Ed Dickson, then you're not doing a very good job replacing Jimmy Graham. I mean, I guess they don't need him to block if they want him to do what Jimmy Graham did, but he also can't catch the ball that well. Let's see here. I wanted to talk about, Danny Shelton too. I really didn't like that move. I don't know why they traded him. I really like Shelton. I thought they should have kept him long term. He's one of their only draft picks that wasn't awful recently, and like high up draft picks. They've really had a lot of busts. He was not one of them. It's kind of interesting that they decided to trade him. Another tweet. Okay, all right, this is interesting. So the Vikings are trading for Trevor Siemian. So I guess they're seeing him now as Cousins' backup. That's a pretty good backup quarterback to have. I mean, Cousins, I don't know what Cousins' injury history looks like, but I know he hasn't always been healthy. So it's a pretty good backup to have. I don't mind that deal. Depends on what they gave up for him. No, Cousins doesn't miss games for injuries. What am I talking about? I'm just saying stuff. Cousins has been pretty good with injuries, but it's not a bad, backup to have. Siemian, again, was somebody that I always thought would be a good backup, but he just didn't seem like he had the arm strength or the ability to, be a full-time starter. He will be an above-average backup, though. I mean, the Vikings basically lost their entire quarterback roster because, the Cardinals decided to give Sam Bradford $20 million, and then Bridgewater left, and obviously Keenum, got the big deal from the Broncos. So, I mean, Cousins is an upgrade over all three of those guys, I would say. And Siemian's, won't be a bad backup. So I like that. I guess it depends on what they gave up for him. Although I don't think it matters. I think if they're confident enough in their roster, because the Vikings have a really good roster. If they're confident enough in their roster, I don't see why they wouldn't, take this measure to make sure that, if Cousins goes down, they're not, screwed. So, I don't mind that. I think it's a pretty good move. It's you can, it's better to be safe than sorry. Quote from The Waterboy. It's a great movie. If anyone has any questions, by the way, or wants my opinion on anything, or wants me to look something up, feel free to let me know in the chat. Keeping pretty close eye on the chat. I'm just gonna continue to go through moves until pretty much things slow down completely. I'll probably be in like 30 minutes to an hour or so. I'm not, it's already starting to slow down a little bit, but there's been some new stuff that's been happening last, 5, 10 minutes. And I'm learning who guys that I never heard of are. So it's kind of fun. Nothing's on the rumor mills right now. Refreshing that. Okay. Oh, this is interesting. So the Dolphins look like they're trying to revamp some stuff. They're talking about bringing in Chad Henne as their backup. He started in Miami. He pretty much failed. He could be an okay backup. I mean, it depends, because Cutler was an awful backup last year, and Matt Moore is actually kind of had an interesting career. There's been times where people thought he could be an above-average starter, and then they try to make him a starter, and he does, he kind of drops off. It's kind of like what Josh McCown's been. But I don't know. I think it's kind of insignificant. I don't know if their roster gets any better. It's just amazing though to me. Like 3 years ago, Cutler got that huge deal from the Bears, The Bears were like, this is our guy. And then like 3 years later, he's being cut as a backup. That's nuts. He's always had, a lot of character issues. He's always sort of been a loudmouth. But I mean, it's just his stock dropped ridiculously quickly. So let's see here. So the Jaguars signed Cody Davis. I'm not super familiar with Cody Davis. Let's take a look at that. He's sort of looks like he's a special teams player. It could be a good signing. I think it just depends on the amount of money you give out, but there's nothing, when you're signing guys for depth, it's always good to sign guys that have good special teams abilities as well. So I think it's probably a pretty good signing. He's also been pretty decent in spot starts, it looks like, too. So that's a good signing. Jaguars increasing their depth, pretty good thing to do. Let's see here. It's kind of interesting. I don't really understand why. I know Allen Robinson has a injury past, but he was when he was healthy, he was definitely the best of their wide receivers. I guess they just maybe lost confidence in his ability to stay healthy or something. But I mean, I don't know why they kept Marquise Lee and not him, because Lee, was the bust out of the group, it seemed like. Allen Hurns was still pretty good. I'm not sure if he's still there, but I'm not sure why they decided to let Robinson go and keep Lee. So I remember Marquise Lee in that draft was really, really highly touted, and nobody even knew who Allen Robinson was, and that was kind of funny. Now, Allen Robinson's the big name there. So yeah, so apparently the Chiefs are not saying why they traded Marcus Peters. And they're saying, after a thorough evaluation of our roster, we decided it was in the best interest for us and for Marcus to move in different directions. This is from Pro Football Talk. The GM of the Chiefs, Brett Veach, apparently said that. Basically, when you trade a guy like Marcus Peters, a guy that's like an all-pro, leads the league in interceptions the past bunch of years, when you trade that kind of guy, when he's still in a rookie contract, for a fourth-round pick and a second-round. Oh, no, wait. Yeah, for a fourth-round and a second-round pick, and you trade that guy who's about to go into the prime of his career and still could potentially have 2 years left on his rookie deal, and you trade him, and you don't want to explain why, and he's that good, we can all put the pieces together. There's probably some really, really bad stuff that probably became unmanageable. And that's a shame, because he's really talented, and it's never a good sign when guys are already acting their way out of places on their rookie contracts. So, I mean, it's not a good sign. And I really hope he gets it together, because he's so talented. But, you don't just trade a guy like that, especially at a position like cornerback, where it's so hard to find top level talent. And it's such an important position. You don't just trade them arbitrarily. They didn't trade them because they thought the draft picks would be a better option, because if he didn't have the concerns, they would have gotten a lot more for this guy. I mean, he was really uber talented. So it's a shame. I hope he gets his act together and, in Los Angeles and lives out his potential. But it's always a concern when you see guys already on their rookie contract. The guys that have shown the ability to play, people just give up on them that quickly. So that's never good. 49ers kept linebacker Brock Coyle to a 1-year deal. Okay. Isn't he he's like a special teams guy or something? I guess, the 49ers have the money. Why not, right? They signed Jerick McKinnon for $30 million. That's good, awful use of money, but what do I know? I'm not a GM. Actually, John Lynch is he seems like a pretty good GM so far. It's hard to criticize him so far. I really don't understand that move, though. That's the one move I really not sure I get. Okay, this headline, I really learned a lot from this headline. I'm going to tell you the headline that I'm reading on Pro Football Talk right now. This is the most informative headline I've ever heard. The Cowboys either are or aren't interested in Ndamukong Suh. Okay. Like, yeah, that's helpful. It's like saying, so that there's only two types of people in this world, like me and everyone who's not me. And that's it. It's like, okay, this is crazy. I don't, it seems like Sue is kind of switching between the Seahawks and the Cowboys. What kind of cap space do the Seahawks have? I don't, aren't they always like cap strapped? And is that why that's why that's their excuse for like not spending money on their offensive line and letting Russell Wilson run around? Like they've had to turn Russell Wilson into Fran Tarkenton because they don't spend any money on their offensive line. Like again, it's if you're, I guess I just don't understand. Like, Richard Sherman's a really good player, and so is Michael Bennett. The reason you would get rid of those guys is not because of play on the field; it's because of their actions off the field. Both of those guys, created headaches. So you want to release them, right? And you want a little bit extra cap space, so you don't think they're going to be headaches. So then, who do you bring in? Oh, Ndamukong Suh. Like, I just, again, Sue's a great player, but it's, he's had locker room problems in the past. He's been a headache in the past. He's probably not as bad as those two guys. He's more of a dirty player, I feel like, than he probably is a locker room headache. But again, the Seahawks' problems are not in their defense still. The Seahawks have an offensive line that may as well be tackling dummies. I mean, their offensive line is just, it's incredible how bad it is. And I mean, it's been bad for a really long time. The fact that Marshawn Lynch put up the numbers he did for so long is actually nuts, because their line is just, they don't put any money into it. I think the year they won the Super Bowl, it's an interesting stat. I could be wrong, but I think the year they won the Super Bowl, they were spending the most money on their offensive line in the entire league. And last season, I think they had already dropped down to the least amount of money. And when you look at some of the moves they made over time, stuff like Max Unger going to the Saints for Jimmy Graham, and getting rid of Russell Okung, which is fine. Like, Okung had injury difficulties and stuff, but they just kept letting guys go one by one. So yeah, I mean, yeah, Sherman definitely had injury issues. But again, like, he's still playing at a higher level than most of the guys you're bringing anyways. I mean, he's still playing at a fairly high level. So I think you get rid of him, either if he's just costing too much money or if he has character issues. But then why bring in a guy that also has character issues? I'm not sure exactly what they're going for. And oh man, their line is pathetic. It's really sad. I mean, I guess they did sort of address it when they traded for Dwayne Brown, which is fine. And he's a pretty solid left tackle. But it's just they keep trying to draft guys in the first round, and it never works. And then they just make Russell Wilson like fend for himself out there. And it's really sad. And you got to feel bad for Russell Wilson. He's one of the best guys in the league. He deserves better than that. I will be right back. 1 second. I just need to get some more water. Maybe something happened while I was gone. Probably not, though. Russell Wilson is, I mean, he's just, there's no one like him. He's one of a kind. And I mean, like, if you look at, like, I was an advocate for him being the MVP last year. And the reason was because MVP stands for most valuable player, right? He led their team in rushing yards, obviously passing yards. He accounted for so much of their offense with basically nothing to work with. Their running game was awful. Their line was awful. He had like a few decent receivers. And there was constant crap coming from the defense saying that they're disappointed in the offense. And there was chaos in the locker room. And yet Russell Wilson still managed to carry them nearly to a playoff spot by himself. So it's like, when you have a guy like Russell Wilson, the least you can do is, make him not have to run away all the time from people, because it seems like that's what they're trying to do with him. And, he's not a running quarterback in an ideal situation. He can scramble. He can throw from the pocket. He can make the throws. You don't need him to run. He's not like a read option type quarterback. He's a regular guy, that happens to be able to scramble. But again, it's just they don't seem to want to spend any money, and there's not a lot of offensive line help out there anymore. I mean, a lot of signings are pretty much already happening. Okay, so Chad Henne is going to the Tennessee Titans for an interview or something. They're not actually signing him, but in case you Titans fans were, wondering, oh, who's going to back up Marcus Mariota for those 4 games that Mariota misses annually, it might be Chad Henne. He might be that guy that comes in for those 4 games. Let's see here. Actually, I think I was a little bit too. I think Mariota missed less games than that. I for some reason I thought he had missed more. Nah. Yeah, he did miss 4 in his rookie year. I don't really like Mariota. How do you guys feel about Mariota? I don't know. Like he's accurate and he can move around. I worry about his arm strength. I worry if he's going to be able to hold up. I worry he's going to fall victim to the same thing that Alex Smith seems to fall victim to, which is his arm strength deteriorates as the season goes on. And, as a result, his play sort of gets worse and worse. I do worry about that. That's something that Alex Smith has sort of dealt with for most of his career. Titans signed Daquan Jones, defensive lineman. He's a pretty good player. Let me take a look. So they re-signed him, nose tackle. From what I've seen from Jones, he's a pretty good player. Let me take a look at some of his numbers. Yeah, that's a good re-signing. I like that. I like that move. That's fine. I guess it depends on what money they gave him. Wonder what they're. Okay, so the deal for Trevor Siemian to the Vikings is apparently a late round pick. So apparently, the Broncos will be getting something like a 6th or 7th, most likely. I mean, Siemian was a 7th round pick himself. So, I mean, if the Broncos got like a year of decent starting from him and like another pick in return, I feel like that's a 7th round pick well spent, honestly. Paxton Lynch is still on that roster too. And they're probably going to look to trade him. I don't think Lynch has any value, honestly. I don't know who would trade for Paxton Lynch. Maybe somebody would, take a flyer on him or something, but I don't know. I mean, you can probably get a guy on the free agent market to be your backup that has, proven more than Lynch. I don't know why you give up anything to get him. I think they might be stuck with him. Like there's a reason, when you're a first round pick and you're losing your job to a 7th round pick with a noodle arm, and then a guy who was so bad that he literally got traded for a higher pick than, you literally traded your own 2nd round pick just to get rid of him. When you can't beat either one of those 2 guys for the starting job and you're a 1st round pick, then, why should I trade for that person? Why should I give that person a chance? There's a, it's something where something's probably going on with Lynch that he hasn't, been able to win the job there. And I think that the fact that the 2 guys who beat him out specifically, that raises a red flag by itself. So I don't think Lynch has any sort of market value. I mean, maybe if a team has a quarterback that goes down last minute or something, maybe some team will panic and trade like a 7th rounder or something, or like a conditional 7th rounder for him. I don't see him having any value until, probably up around when the season starts, just because I don't think that any team is going to be willing to, based on the fact that he hasn't been able to get the starting job. I don't think any team will be willing to give up anything for him. So again, I think maybe a team panicking might, but I think a team right now is probably looking towards the draft. I mean, it's such a deep quarterback draft. I don't know exactly what they think they're gonna, get from Paxton Lynch. That's a shame. And he looked like a pretty good prospect too. And he's just, I guess he just doesn't. I guess there's just something going on. I mean, even when he played, he wasn't the worst. I get like, same thing with Peters. You never really know what's going on behind the scenes. You never really know why somebody might not be great for. Okay, so this is the deal that they're announcing for Siemian, which is the Broncos will send Siemian and a 2018 late round pick to the Vikings for a pick in 2019. Quarterback Tom Savage is signing with the Saints. Tom Savage is a Saint. Okay. That's fine. That's a decent backup. I don't think Drew Brees has ever missed a game anyway, so he'll hopefully he has good hands to hold the clipboard. Excuse me. I'm just gonna grab a cough drop while I do this. Drew Brees literally doesn't miss any games. Look. Tom Savage he was supposed to be decent. He lost his job though immediately, and Deshaun Watson really earned that. Let's see here. It still's not announcing the exact picks in the Siemian deal. So I'll update when I get that update. But for right now, they still haven't announced the actual picks. Keep hearing all this Chad Henne news. Yeah, good stuff. I still remember him like in his rookie year. I don't know why I remember all this stuff. He was like, he threw a lot of interceptions. He was an interception fiend. Let's see here. I'm just like constantly updating these pages. Like I said, though, if you guys have any questions or want my opinion on something, feel free to post it in the chat. I'm looking at the chat pretty regularly. I have a lot of opinions on a lot of things, so I'm sure I'll have an opinion on one of pretty much every question. Let me close this up. Okay. I don't think the Cousins deal has actually been finalized yet. They're already announcing winners and losers of free agency. All right. So I think stuff is slowing down a little bit right now. And there's not really going to be much more for me to talk about. I think the streams can get a little boring soon. I'm thinking about, making a video maybe on Friday or something and doing a little wrap up after more dust is settled. And I'm definitely going to try to be more active on here from now on. I really need to start making content again. I'll do some NBA stuff as well because I'm a huge NBA fan. Thank you all for watching, though. And I hope you enjoyed getting constant updates. And hope all of you have a fabulous day. Yeah, this was fun. I really enjoyed doing this, and I'll try to do some more streams as well. And all right, see you guys later.